Hey y'all, No here. So today is going to be, or this week is going to be our second of our three Christmas lessons. And so the scripture we're going to start with today is found in Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 8. It's going to sound pretty familiar to you. And it reads like this. Now it came about in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that a census be taken of all the inhabited earth. This was the first census taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And all were proceeding to register for the census, everyone to his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the city of Nazareth to Judea, to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and family of David. And he went there in order to register with Mary, who was engaged to him and was with child. And it came about that while they were there, the days were completed for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and she wrapped him in cloths and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. So a pretty familiar story. But there's another story about something that was happening about that same time. As a matter of fact, it may have happened at the same exact time. And it wasn't in Bethlehem, but it was around 600 to 1,000 miles away from there. Something else was happening at the same time. And so this is found in Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. This also is going to be a pretty familiar story. And it starts in verse 1. It says, Now after Jesus has been born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him. And when Herod the king heard it, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. So, why was Herod troubled? Well, he was the king that had been set up by the Roman authorities, and so these magi, we always say there was three of them, but we don't know that for sure. There's a pretty good chance that it was, that we'll find out in a minute. But they showed up asking, well, where's the new king of the Jews? And so Herod wasn't ready to give up his throne to a new king. And so he wanted to find out who this new king was. Now, another question that everybody would like to know the answer to, and we don't know the answer for sure, but we have some pretty good ideas. Who were these magi, or people that we sometimes call the wise men? Well, there's a very good chance that these wise men came from Babylon, because the inhabitants of Judea, whenever Nebuchadnezzar conquered Judea, the inhabitants of Judah, and especially the inhabitants of Jerusalem, were exiled to Babylon. And who was one of the people that was exiled to Babylon? Well, Daniel was. And Daniel was actually given the position by King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon as being one of the wise men, and eventually he gave him rule over all of Babylon. Daniel was only second to Nebuchadnezzar. And so there's a very good chance, of course, Daniel had read the writings of Isaiah and the other prophets, and so he knew that the Messiah was coming, and so very good chance that he shared the writings of the prophet Isaiah with the other wise men who were Babylonians, and that story may have been passed down from the time of Daniel to the time of the birth of Christ. Now, we don't know that for sure, but it's probably as good a theory as any. So if that were the case, these wise men or magi would have come from what is now Iraq. And so that's a long journey to make, but it was a much more complicated journey because of the way that they had to make it. Because as it said in the text, these magi had seen a star. And when do stars appear? Well, at night. So if they were depending on this star to navigate them to where the king was, where Jesus was, which was in Bethlehem, then they had to travel at night in order to know the direction to go. Now, the distance, if you were in an airplane and flew from Iraq to Bethlehem, around 600 miles. But there's a problem. There's a big mountain range between Babylon and Israel, or Judea, as it was known at that time. And so, very good chance that the Magi had to actually go north around this mountain range and then come back south instead of going straight to Bethlehem. So it was a very difficult journey for them to make. And so you might wonder, well, ever how many magi there were. We think that there were 3, but there could have been some more. But whatever amount of magi there were, it wasn't the whole country. There was just a few of these magi that came looking for Jesus. And so why didn't everybody else in Babylon see the same star that the Magi saw? Well, again, we don't know the answer for sure, but it may be very possible that because of the influence that Daniel had on the previous generations, they were expecting that star, or they were expecting some kind of sign that would show them that this King of the Jews had been born. And so it was probably visible to everybody, but the Magi were the only ones that seemed to notice it and understand what it meant. Now, it's kind of the same way as we live today. Are very many people looking for Jesus? Probably fewer than there have ever been in the whole history of the world. Especially in the United States, there are probably fewer than have ever been looking for him since the history of the time of Jesus being born. And, not many people were looking for Jesus back then. And unfortunately, not many people are looking for him today. So, could Jesus come back today not the same way that he did the first time, but come again? He absolutely could. But are we really expecting Jesus to come back today? Well, we know that he could, but we probably don't really think it will be today, even though we know that it could. But we should have that same type of expectancy, just like the Magi did. So the Magi had to make a lot of sacrifices in order to go and find this new king. It was not a comfortable journey for them to make. They obviously couldn't carry enough provisions to last them the whole journey. So it was costly. They had to buy food as they went. The pictures on the Christmas cards always show these Magi having camels, but we don't know if they had camels or not. They may have had to walk the whole distance. So there's a lot of unknowns in the story that we don't know, that we can only imagine. But there are some things that we do know, and we know that journey wasn't easy. It wasn't made but just by a few of these Magi. And they were really desperate to make that trip. They were willing to give up a lot to make that trip. Now, there's a very good chance that this trip actually lasted for 2 years. Now, that's a long time, and it sounds like longer than it should take in order to travel that distance. But we have some evidence that it may have taken them 2 years to make that journey, because if we read the rest of the story, we find out that after the Magi went back home again, that for some reason Herod had all of the male children 2 years of age and under killed. And so that may have been because when he asked the Magi when they first saw the star, they may have said, well, it was 2 years ago when we first saw it. And so Herod thought, well, that's when the new king was born, so I'm going to kill all the children, all the male children under 2 years of age, so he can't come and take my throne away from me. So there's a lot to the story that's unknown, and so we can't say for sure that it happened that way, but we have a few little hints that it did. Now, if we turn to Matthew chapter 2 and verse 7, we'll find out what actually happened after the wise men got to Bethlehem. It says, then Herod secretly called the Magi and ascertained from them the time the star appeared. And we think that it was probably 2 years earlier than that time. And so he, that is Herod, sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and make careful search for the child, and when you have found him, report to me, that I too may come and worship him." And having heard the king, they went their way, and lo, the star which they had seen in the east went on before them, until it came and stood over where the child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And they came into the house and saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. And opening their treasures, they presented to him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And having been warned by God in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed from their own country by another way. So here we have one little hint that makes us think that there was three magi, because there were three gifts. And we also have an indication of the fact that when the Magi traveled to Jerusalem, they may have went north around the mountains, but because they were warned in this dream, when they went back, they may have actually gone through or over the mountain range, which would have been much easier for them to do, because when they were going to Bethlehem, they needed the star to guide them. But once they got there, there were well-established routes both around the mountains and over the mountains that they could find their way back to Babylon without having a star to guide them. So we can learn a lot from what the Magi did once they got there. And it's the very thing that we should be doing all the time, and especially during this Christmas season. So the first thing that the Magi did when they got to the house where Jesus was is they worshiped him. And then they gave him gifts. They gave him the very best that they have, and the most valuable things that they had. And we should do the same. And we should also be like the star that led the Magi to Jesus. We should be constantly looking for ways that we can lead people to Jesus too. So our craft this week is again going to have something to do with light, and it's going to be something that has to do with the light that led the Magi to where Jesus was. So let's go to the craft. Okay, if you've got a pretty good imagination, you may have already guessed that what we're going to make today is a star, since that was a big part of the lesson that the wise men followed a star. So, but it's a really cool three-dimensional star, and I scarcely know which way to turn it so you can see it. And it's made up of two stars of David, coincidentally. It's a six-sided star. And so you take these two stars, you slide them together and glue them together, and you end up with that. So, I don't know if I made that look easy or not, but when you get a bunch of 5-year-olds trying to do it, they think they know the right way to do it, and they'll jump ahead and glue it together the wrong way. So probably one of the most important things that you're going to use is just this little guide tool. And all it is an index card. And so you fold it in half again, and then tape it together here and here. And you'll see in a minute just how helpful this is going to be when your students get ready to make their star. So the piece parts, you've got 2 equilateral triangles like this, with a slot cut halfway down from the pointy end. You've got 2 more equilateral triangles, the same size, and they've got a small slot cut from this direction, halfway up. And you make these out of poster board, and then you spray paint them with some silver paint, let it dry real good, flip it over, paint the other side. Not in class, okay? You're going to do this ahead of time, okay? So these painted pieces is what you're going to bring to class. Once the paint dries, take a paper towel. Sometimes the paint wants to rub off, so just take a paper towel and go over your triangles, and that way paint won't be coming off on your students' hands. Now, you're probably wondering, how in the world am I going to make all these triangles? It takes 4 triangles for every kid. This sounds a lot more work than I want to do. Well, I've got some shortcuts that I think will probably help you, and we'll go over those last. So let's assemble our star first. So what you're going to put together is one of each kind. And that's where this little guy really helps your students to keep it straight. So I'm going to put the pointy end on, and I'm just going to show you how it goes together to start with. And then we're going to slide the other end on. And so when you do that, that makes this Star of David. So once you get your 2 pieces ready, I'm going to take a glue stick and put glue kind of in this general area, not getting way out on the points, because the points are going to be the part that are going to stick out. So we're going to do that. And we take this piece here, slide it up on our tool. Okay. Press it together good and tight. And then we'll lay that to the side. Okay, I think that's going to work okay. And then take 2 more triangles that are opposite from each other Okay, so that gives us an idea of where we want to put the glue. Everywhere except on the points is about what it amounts to. So down here, and if you get some glue in places where it doesn't really belong, it'll dry eventually. Okay, so we're going to take this star or this triangle, slide it all the way up on the tool. Mash those together. Take it off the tool. And my glue stick's trying to dry up on me. Okay, and then for the tricky part, really the only tricky part that there is. So what you're going to do is you're going to grasp each star so that the slots in the pointy end are facing towards each other. And then we're going to skillfully slide one star up inside the other star, and then when you unfold it, you got a star that stays together pretty much on its own. Okay. Pretty easy, right? This guy is what makes it easy. So you're going to want to make a bunch of these so that each student can have one. So now the question is, well, how do I go about making all these triangles? Well, you can make it easier on yourself. So each triangle is going to be 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches, whether the slot is in the pointy end or whether the slot is on the bottom. Same size triangle for both ends. It's just that we put the slot in the opposite side of the triangle. So what I came up with to make the triangles out of is I actually got a piece of poster board, and went over to one side and drew 6-inch triangles down one side of the poster board. And then I cut out this strip, and then I took a utility knife. So pretend this is a utility knife. And so what you're going to do is just cut slots where the lines are. Okay, so this is one triangle, this is the opposite triangle. So I just took and cut slots like that. all the way across the strip of poster board. And then what that does for you is then you can use this as a template. So you just put this on top of a sheet of poster board and just mark where the slots are. Okay, all the way down. And then what that does for you is then you can take scissors and cut out your triangles. But it goes a lot easier if you have a template that you can use over and over instead of having to try and measure these 6-inch triangles every time you draw one. So I hope that makes sense for you. Then once you get the triangles cut out, what I usually do is I'll take a pair of scissors and open this slot up a little bit wider. So just take a pair of scissors and cut on one side and then pull a little shaving of cardboard out so that these triangles will go up onto your tool nice and easy. Okay, then once you got all the triangles cut out, then you're just going to lay them. I usually go something like this, get a big piece of newspaper or something and spray paint them, let them dry, flip them over, spray paint the other side, let them dry. Once you're sure they're good and dry, then take a paper towel or something and kind of rub across the triangles to make sure that you don't have any paint that's going to come off onto people's hands. So I think that does it for you. Yeah, just remember, let me remeasure, I'll make sure I told you right. Yeah, 6-inch equilateral triangles. The slot for each triangle is going to be about 3 inches there to there. Same way on the other one. So that, well, let me slide them. Well, I'm still doing it wrong. Oh yeah. That's what I get for not using the tool. If you use the tool, it's very easy. So we go like that. The slots slide on to the same end of your little tool every time you put two triangles together. All right, so have fun with that. It's a lot of fun. It really makes a really cool looking triangle. I think your students are really going to like it. It's also a very nice looking decoration to go on the tree. Whether you put it on the top or not, it's nice and shiny and reminds us of the star that the wise men followed to find their way to Jesus. All right, so that is it for today. Thanks for watching. I know making this template may not seem too simple, so if you have any questions or have any problems with it, feel free to leave me a question in the comments box. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch the video. God bless you, each and every one, and vaya con Dios.